We live in some of the oldest mountains in the world.
Stolen land, stolen again to create the extraction state.
We are real people talking about real things in a real way.
This is Appalachian Living.
All right, it's time. Welcome. I'm refreshed. I'm back from Florida.
Yeah, we know. We know.
I
Persona
saw
non grata here.
I saw evidence of you on the beach and things like that.
But while you were away, I was working hard and I was
scheduling our podcast.
Our wonderful guest today. And I've been trying to get this lady on for ever since we started the podcast. So I am so excited to introduce Caitlyn Ware. How are you, Caitlyn?
Welcome.
And I guess I'm really bad about who you are. You are. Why don't you introduce
yourself?
Who you are and what you do?
Tell us what you are, what you do. All of those wonderful things.
All right, cool. Yeah, so I'm Caitlyn Ware. I'm actually a pastor up in Tucker County, West Virginia, all the way up by Blackwater Falls. But I work with Brad Davis in McDowell County with a group called From Below, Rising Together for Coalfield Justice. And so, we, for about the past year, I'd say, we've been distributing water and trying to raise awareness on the McDowell water crisis, and also, bringing attention to the region and really just kind of trying to reclaim the story of our area, right? And so, what's the real history? What's the real story of the area? And what does God have to say about that? So, yeah.
I love it. And that's why I wanted you on, because that's a lot of what we like to talk about on here, is the real history and, what really happened and what's actually happening and the things that aren't really put out there in the media.
What makes it out and what doesn't make it out.
What makes it out and what doesn't. And the things, we witnessed this today, telling a true story, something we witnessed personally, and people saying we have the worst takes of Appalachia ever. And it's how can you say that someone has a bad take when it's their actual experience?
It's their personal experience. Right. How long have you been a pastor?
This is actually my first year. I've been preaching for a while now, probably since 2016. I've been preaching on and off, but this is my first full-time appointment.
Very cool. And is it a denominational appointment?
Yeah, United Methodist Church. Yep.
Good deal.
And so how I met Caitlyn was she was doing the, your page or your thing with Brad is called From Below. And I found you guys on Facebook, and y'all had you gotten a water buffalo for McDowell County. And I just did a random message hey, I'm not crazy, but I love what you're doing. I'm in Wyoming County and have this issue too. And it was we clicked and we had a dinner it was cold. It was December, January. I don't know when it was. I know we kept trying to get together with Brad and Christy and
the
whole crew,
Zach,
Brandy and Zach, and Brandy.
All other people that need to be on the podcast.
Yeah,
right.
That we're trying to, work with to get on the podcast. But
how did you connect with Brad in McDowell County from there?
Yeah, so So first, it's you have the United Methodist conference area, at least for this conference, is pretty much the entire state of West Virginia or thereabouts, and a little slice of Maryland. And we had met each other a couple years ago through just clergy connections, and then I was in seminary getting my degree requirements for my clergy ordination track. And I had figured out, really, I would say around 2021, 2022, I was like, I'm really liking like Coalfield ministry. Like, I really want to explore this more. And I said, I can't think of a better human being to do that with, or a better place to do that in than McDowell County and Brad Davis. And so I interned with him for the summer. I was living in Gary, and I fell in love with it. I was like, I know, like, this is my life's work. Like, this is what I want to pour into. And then I just kind of kept haunting him. Like, I never really left. I'm just like traveling the state, like trying to connect with him as much as I can. And I mean, we pretty much connect, virtually just about every day. But we try to get together physically and in that.
Is that ours?
Oh, I think we froze. I'm sorry.
Yeah, a little bit. Go ahead. I think you're good now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I got.
It's interesting to hear that story because it feels like a true calling to me that you were first felt, compelled toward the coal area ministries and then a specific place because you had a specific contact there. And I traveled through Gary shortly after the floods. I told you it was the first time I'd ever come through from Tazewell into West Virginia. And I came across the mountain there, and I was just, by the time I got here, I was just kind of shell-shocked. I was like, I worked in post-Katrina New Orleans as a FEMA housing inspector, and I told Lindsay, I said, that's comparable to things I saw after Katrina. I mean, it was just complete devastation. I think somebody said that it looked like a bomb had gone off there. I mean, it's just, the destruction was profound, and the infrastructure impacts are profound in a community already dealing with water issues,
Right. Yeah, it's like I keep telling people, I mean, it's like you went from having healthcare issues, food insecurity issues, water access issues, and then you have no housing. I mean, you really went to the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely. I mean, down in Bartley, I mean, Bartley still looks like that. A lot of areas in McDowell County, I mean, the National Guard finally made its rounds many, many weeks after, but it just, it's still just devastated. And there's several areas that, they really haven't gotten to, it's going to be a long haul to get reconstruction going because there's so few contractors or because it's just so low on the priority list. And I think about Latin Appalachia, which was putting out, it put out like something like 50,000 meals across the county.
Huge effort. Yeah.
But its basement is literally just cemented with flood mud and they can't operate right now. They're out of operation at the moment. Because of that, right? And so, it's such a amazing, thing that's going on is not able to fully operate just because of health inspection reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're talking about the flood of February
of 2025.
Of this
year. A couple
year.
months ago, yeah.
And
I'm really glad you mentioned that because it demonstrates that even the people who were up and moving around and doing the best they could to help their community were deeply impacted, and they are still dealing with those impacts that aren't going to go anywhere anytime soon.
And the governor swears that he's done all that he can and that nobody down there needs any help. Can you comment on that?
Dude's a hero. I mean, he's Superman.
You mean that paid organizer from New Jersey? that paid guy from New Jersey that came here to stir stuff up? That's how I refer to him because for years I've been called paid organizer, out of town paid organizer, here to stir shit up. This individual was literally put here by powers that be in order to perform an agenda that he has done and succeeded at, and he doesn't give two shits about the people down here. We are talking points to him and to many of the people there.
Yeah, lest we forget the fact that, there's a book called Death in Mudlick about the opioid crisis and particularly the Kermit area. He was busy during that period of time trying to cut to basically kill the Charleston Gazette, shut that down, and also like has lobbying ties for the big pharmaceutical companies, right?
While simultaneously advocating for a settlement that's supposed to come out of these opioid. Yeah, it goes back to what Crystal said, is to exist in this space, you have to have feet in two places, right? You have to be over here and over here. And this person is exemplifying what it means to be placed somewhere to perform an agenda, and we are the fallout from that.
Right. Absolutely.
But nobody cares about us.
I care. This girl cares.
I know you do. and I'm not
cares.
saying nobody. I know who cares.
Sure. But I see your point too, that we're not on the priority list.
We are not. And Caitlyn, I want to make sure that this is why I called you on here, because I'm just looking for an excuse. But
you want to hang out with the cool kids? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I want to hang out with Caitlyn.
I want to hang out with y'all.
Like, I was trying to get her here. I was trying to find a way to meet her. She's like, I'm everywhere right now, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But, we every time I've been beating the drum about this on TikTok and on other platforms. But TikTok is where you get all of the hate from other people and other places that don't really understand. They don't care.
This recent guy, he's from up north somewhere here in West Virginia, and he likes to tell us that if we were smart, we would move north of 64 because nothing below there is worth being.
Isn't the Greenbrier? It's just north of 64.
Isn't worth going to, and we should just give that up to the coal companies and the energy companies
west of 77,
so they can do business.
East of 64.
They can do business, right? That's what this guy told us, and then proceeded to tell us that I'm out of touch, and I don't know what I'm talking about.
Here's the thing:
but
it's just stupid comments on.
Yeah. It's just these are the things that we have to deal with on a constant basis, and these are not only the people that are speaking out. This is what people behind the scenes are saying about us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. I think So I'm from Taylor County, and I'm from a community called Flemington. We had about 300 folks in it, and like back in the day, that would have been a mining town. Way on back in the day, like very early. And I think what I'm realizing recently is that a lot of our northern coalfield areas have just lost their history. Like because it's not in front of you, right? And it's like I grew up having no idea that coal mining was present in not just my community, but all of the surrounding communities in my area.
How come you didn't know that? Is that not something that they just taught or knew, or how? Like, was it so long ago that it just got forgotten?
It was so long ago that, for one, the tipples and such had been taken down.
Mm-hmm.
At least until 2016, there wasn't active mining going on. Now, Arch Lear is currently in operation. I have 3 family members that work for Arch, but it wasn't ongoing, and pretty much anyone that grew up in that had passed away at that point. And so, our only folks with like living memory of what it was like in those camps are about 95.
That's fascinating to me.
And so I started reading on Dark and Bloody Ground, which is like the oral mine wars history. And it blew my mind, because I was like, this happened in West Virginia. I was like, what? And then I started, I was just like talking about this with folks, and they were like, oh, well, Rosemont was a camp, Simpson was a camp. I was like, no, and then they would start saying, your great grandfather died of black lung. You walked picket lines. Where was this in my life? Right.
Because what I'm hearing is that you have this in your blood, girl, and you didn't even know it.
and I think it's like it kind of comes around and it finds you, like, because I think the story wants to be told even across time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's when those stories are not in front of you and that story's not being told, it gets lost. But I think it finds its way back over time.
Well, and I was told by a college professor at Virginia Tech, the man who actually introduced me to Appalachian Studies and Larry Gibson, that I came from he could tell by the way I told stories that I came from a strong oral storytelling, culture, which is one way to say you talk a lot and you tell a lot of stories. And I do. I come from Italians on one side, so my hands are always flying around. And then I come from Appalachia on the other side, where our culture and our history is our story. It is how we tell our story. Like Crystal said, who are you? Where are you from? Who do you come with? That's your story. And we are so powerful that I think it's been very intentional to change our story and tell us who we are and make us littler and less than, because we do carry this power of these mountains and our fortitude that comes from living here. And that's dangerous to, people who are in places of power who need us to be quiet in order to extract and exploit and gain monetary gain from this place.
That's what I feel when people are being negative to us on social media. They want us to shut up. They're trying to discourage me to get me to shut up. But it's not going to work. So,
well, and it's like, I bring all that up to just say, it's like, I think so many people don't realize that history impacts them too, and it's like a lot of the folks that, even within West Virginia, that treat everyone south of 64 as less than, right? It's like, I don't think they realize, oh, you're probably impacted by a lot of the same stuff and you have no idea just because it's not in front of your face.
Yes. And it reminds me of a story. So I won't say where I was, but it was a place with sand and water. And a gentleman came in. I had parked in a place I shouldn't be. And somebody was saying, are you from West Virginia? They were walking down the beach and they were like, are you from West Virginia? Are you from West Virginia? And at first the guy was like, whatever, let him get towed, without realizing I'm next to him and it was my car. And I jumped up and I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go move it. So I come back and he obviously feels bad about being kind of like, well, let them go to, whatever. They're from West Virginia. And he's like, well, what part of West Virginia are you from? And I told him, and he made a comment about how excited we must be that coal's coming back. And I said, well, they just cut 400 jobs in Wyoming County at a coal mine. And they are also working on cutting Medicaid, which is how a lot of our sick miners and their families survive. And we're under a lot of pressure right now. So no, we're not really feeling really good about that. And I was a lot bitchier and snarkier than that response. And he just kind of, turned away. And so a couple minutes later, I was like, I feel like that was a really bitchy and snarky response, and I should contextualize that a little bit. And he looked at me and he said, okay. And we had a conversation. Turns out his granddad was from Kentucky and mined coal and died after a rock fall in a mine, where he went home from the mine thinking he was okay and died in bed that night.
Oh, God.
Right? At 39, 35 years old, 38 years old. So everybody is impacted by what has happened in these hills in one way or another, whether it's you turning on your electricity or whether it, everybody has ties. And it's incredible to me that even that far away in Florida, on a place I won't mention with sand and water.
It's okay. I'm not going to get mad.
There was this connection. But you're right about it not being in your face either, because if you look at your West Virginia history books, this is not part of what they teach. They might mention a sentence or two, but they don't go in depth on it.
It's usually sugar-coated.
What do you recommend that we read? I mean, you've mentioned 2 books already. Can you go
Can you
on?
send us a list, please?
I got all, I mean, there's so many good ones. I just like, I mean, Life, Work, and Rebellion in the Coalfields, I think, is like my handbook. David Corbin's book. I mean, that one continuously blows my mind every time I go through it. And and I think it captures too, not just the way the state was literally, I mean, structured, legally and socially to maintain that company system. But I think it also, it's not the point of the book, and it's not incredibly prevalent throughout, but I do think it touches a little bit on that solidarity from the folks in the surroundings, folks in the surroundings, which, Fairmont Coalfield, ages away from the downtown, right? But they were part of Bear Mountain too. So they were part of the rallies. They were part of the union movement in the street. And it's I wish people connected that that all of us throughout West Virginia, throughout Eastern Kentucky, throughout Southwest Virginia, are connected to that labor movement around the industry, because the company towns, even if you're not living in a coal camp, was basically, structured into the way that West Virginia operates. I mean, they formed an internal colony. And so I think, to touch on that, how does it impact the entirety of the state? I think Life, Work, and Rebellion in the Southern Coalfields by David Corbin. And it's a really good book, dense as hell. Not a fun read, but Coal Trap by James, I think it's James Van Nostrand. He came out and just talked about the recent last 20 years of coal history throughout the state, and the way that Friends of Coal formed, the way that propaganda works throughout the state.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
I'm really I'm a political science major, but I was really good at English, so I took a lot of English courses to keep my GPA up. I probably could have double majored in English, but as a result, propaganda and writing and linguistics were all parts of my study. And it was around the same time that the Bush Jr. presidency was kicking off in those campaigns, and Karl Rove was a fascinating person to study because he was the propaganda master around how to craft things and spin things in a way that made everybody feel warm and fuzzy about them, right? And my intellectual mind was still unseasoned enough to not understand how to take it and learn from it and use it. And as I grew older and as I grew more strategic in my thinking and my work, looking at those people that are such derisive characters, right, who are nobody wants to, admit, I study Karl Rove and what he does, right? But to co-opt that type of ability to create propaganda, the ability to talk about things in a way that literally shapes the cultural paradigm. That is power.
And it causes people to even go against their own interests, and they don't even realize it. And then when you tell them that you're going against your own interests, they think you're the one that's wrong. Right. It's really fascinating to me.
So I like that you brought that up as a companion, because it's important to understand those programs and how they developed.
Yeah, Coal Trap's dense as shit. It's a good read.
It's a commitment.
But I hope y'all know, I'm I heard the question. I'm going to give you an answer. And then my cat is throwing itself against the door every time you ask a question.
I didn't know if it was a kid or a cat, but I saw you.
It's my cat just throwing his whole body against the door. But
your cat is rolling over with the ancestors, being like, "Preach, sister, preach."
He's distracting. But yeah, so one of the things I think about is so like I said, coal mining stopped, pretty early on. I mean, I think it was pretty much gone in my area around 1940. It had pretty much been exhausted, or not exhausted, but finished at that point. But they came in it was Bill Rainey and Friends of Coal and the West Virginia Coal Association and all that came in. It would have been somewhere between 2012 and 2016, because that's the time period in which I was in Grafton High School, and I remember he came in to talk about he was basically prepping everybody for Lear to come in to Taylor County, and it's only about 3 miles. The mine's only about 3 miles outside of Grafton, and everybody bought into it because they're like, "Oh, I'll make a ton of money." It's a good job. It's a good paying job. I can go right out of high school to it. People were seeing this as like a really good opportunity and like a way to bring money into the town. But it was also because like there weren't a lot of mines in operation in the area at the time, and I don't think they realized like that history that already existed in the area from many ages ago.
The impact of having a mine in the community, right? Yeah,
and so now like he came in, prepped everybody with his words, came into the school. I mean, like to the schools, like whether it was
marketing,
middle school, handing people those like squishy ball Friends of Coal things.
Wait, that sounds like indoctrinating our children to me. But what do I know?
Some would say,
but
he did all that, and then now you got people. There was a couple weeks ago, this woman, she was living in the Knoxville area, and she went to go smoke, and there's debates as to whether or not she was in her living room or outside back of her house, but they've been putting methane ventilation fans 9 feet from these people's back doors. And she exploded. I mean, like it just lit up, and she had 3rd-degree burns like all over her body. And that's Taylor County. Like that's like, I don't think people, as long as it's out of sight, out of mind, and we don't remember who we are, we can keep that industry propped up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really love that. As long as it's out of sight, out of mind, and we don't remember who we are, we can continue. Which seems, as I grow into my more authentic self in my middle age, that sounds like a lot of dishonesty happening, right? That sounds like all the things we talk about, pulling the curtains back and shining the light on. And I think that statement just cut me to the quick. I'm so glad you phrased it that way.
That was good.
What do you see in the future here? Because one of the things we talk about a lot is that we wreck people's day.
Well, we
ruin their lives and tell them about this. But given the water issues, we've talked a lot about the nuances. We'll have experts on here to go in depth into that. But I'm curious, as a pastor, as someone who's come to being a pastor later, and when I say later in life, I don't mean that in the sense that you're old, but like, this was something that came to you. You weren't 5, 6, 7 years old knowing this was what you wanted to do, right?
Right.
First of all, what did you want to do when you were 7 years old?
Oh, I wanted to be like young.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to like ride orcas and shit. I was like,
you're a mermaid. Outstanding.
Like, let's go like SeaWorld, like crazy stuff. I don't even know, man.
Marine biologist is what we all said back in the day when we felt that way.
Oh,
she was probably like me. Is like, I don't know what I want to do when I
like chase tornadoes.
Love it.
Yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I was all sorts of shit.
So you're geared for the chase of the excitement, and that's interesting.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I didn't grow up in the church either. I didn't even really go to church till about like 2015 or so. I woke up one morning, felt like I had to go to church.
I love this. This is a calling. I feel like this is a calling, like a true calling. And I feel like that resonates with me when people who have chosen that and go in that direction, when that is their story, kind of like it picked me. Like I didn't really pick it. It kind of told me, hey, go to church today. Hey, go to this church. I'm a real estate attorney, and I've noticed a lot of property transactions with the Methodist Church lately because I know that there is some change and development and division within the church. There, do you feel comfortable talking a little bit about that?
Fine. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I just say, I think that ties into your other question too, like what do I see with the future of the area? The United Methodist presence is very quickly based. It's not just United Methodist.
You're muffled.
I'm going to stop you because you are muffled. I can't hear you. Yeah, try that.
If I lean closer, can you hear me?
Perfect. Yes.
Get closer.
Okay, great.
Because I really want to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah, I think like as far as the future of that area, and then like also just like with what's happening in the United Methodist Church, like a lot of United Methodist churches, particularly in the Southern Coalfields, are closing not just because of theological disagreements on various issues, but also because they don't have the money to stay open. And I don't think that pastors and denominations, Christian-wide, like across the faith, right? I don't think they're talking enough about the fact that like you can't expect that, some of the poorest counties in America to afford a full-time pastor and a building and denominational dues, right?
From their extra disposable income.
Right. I mean, it's just impossible. And especially in communities that are dwindling very fast, like depopulating very fast. When you get these like very rural, coal camp churches that have maybe 5 people, they can't support a full-time pastor.
Right.
And that's why you end up in cases of like Brad Davis, he's serving 5 churches. He was serving 6 churches in McDowell County. Wow. I think one of the things that I see is part of what I'm moving into now, and I mean like quite literally like in the next 2 weeks, is I'll be part-time in the Ripley area and part-time in the Coalfields. And I have a lot to say about that, but I'll just say I think that churches are really good at charity, and they're not always good at justice. I think they're really good at saying, people need help. Let's just get the resources, and we're not going to stand in deep solidarity and live amongst the people. And at the same time, though, there's not a lot of areas that can afford a person to be down there full time to live amongst the community and do that work. And so I find myself really conflicted at this point in my life of saying, how can I live my call in a denominational setting? Because I don't want to perpetuate colonizing ministry, right? Mm-hmm. Because it has always been outsiders coming in, do-gooders, parachuting in to do something and then leave, right? And I recognize that. And so, most of my work at this point with McDowell County has just been to help support what Brad is doing on the ground, or, helping connect resources and stuff from afar, because I recognize I'm not from there and I don't live there. And I think, unfortunately, you're going to see a lot of clergy having to commute in because they just can't either get their denominational appointments in those areas, or because churches don't exist, or because there's not the funding to be able to do it. And so as a whole, as far as like the area, I think you're going to see Brad and I have talked about kind of like a tomb period, right? Like Good Friday of the coal industry has happened. We are well past the Good Friday of the coal industry.
That's right.
And there is a lot of crucified people living in the coal fields.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we're in the tomb period. I think this is the Saturday, because what you're seeing is you've got SNAP cuts, Medicaid cuts. 90% of the drinking water state revolving funds for West Virginia are being cut now. That's as of last week. You name it. I mean, the entire safety net of the area is rapidly disappearing.
Yeah. And
churches are expected to backfill that. Food banks are expected to backfill that. All of these charitable organizations are expected to backfill that.
and yet churches are not able to do it because they can't, the institutions be institutions. They want to keep themselves going. And where are the populous funded places? North of 64.
Yeah.
Just like with the state prioritizing things north of 64, because that's where the population and the money is. It kind of happens in the denomination too. And I don't just mean Methodist Church. I think it's across denominations, right?
And any organization, I think you're right, that wants to survive is going to go where its funding is.
But I do have hope, and there's a lot of things that keep me up at night. I think it's just the safety net loss. A lot of people are gonna die. I mean, there's no other way to say it.
And not only are a lot of people going to die, the ripple effect it's going to have, because all of a sudden that person who passes, the people they support no longer have that support, and there's nowhere else to bounce to for that support. So now we create this, again, on top of a generational opioid crisis and a generational black lung and minor sickness crisis.
And water crisis.
It's almost like they're trying to depopulate the area.
I've kind of felt that for a little while. When people keep telling me to move out and, you need to go somewhere else. I have been other places. Like I said earlier, I lived in Southern Florida. I've lived in North Carolina. I have lived in other places. Mm-hmm. I always come back to this place because this is my home. This is where my family is. This is where my mother and father are, and they're not going to go anywhere. My dad wants to be buried here. Yeah. If your parents were still here and wanted to be buried here, what would you do? Would you say, to hell with it? Now, some of you do, because I know you. Right? And that's your own choices. Mm-hmm. But don't come at me when I'm trying to save my home, Right. And it's so frustrating because I'm like, this is my home. This is, everyone has that place that gives them this comfort. And this is that place. And I'll be damned if someone ruins it.
And, Brad and I talk a lot about, salvation. I ain't gonna preach too much. I'll be brief.
I'll listen to you preach all day long. I feel like you were called. I feel like you were called to the Coalfields to preach, sister. So preach.
I just, I think that salvation is not this thing of you punched your ticket, your get out of hell ticket, and you fly away and you escape this place. I think salvation.
Isn't there a book called Acts?
Amen. There's a book called Revelation.
I have read a little bit of my Bible.
Some say heaven comes down, or that heaven and earth meet. Right? It's not you're flying away. And I think that if this is what we got, if you are not escaping this place, if this is the place that is redeemed, then why are you trying to escape it? We believe that United Methodists believe, I should say, believe that, all creation is redeemed together. Romans 8, and I think that, that I don't know what that means when the mountains are gone, because that's irreplaceable, right? I don't know what that means when your town is Munson, West Virginia, and it's buried a mile underneath Valley Fill. Right. You can't return home. You will never return home. I don't know what redemption looks like with total destruction, but I do know that if we're going to really be serious as Christians about saving, quote unquote, saving people, I don't think that means, saying a certain set of words to magically punch your ticket for a future. I think that means you're actively working to restore heaven on earth, right?
Yeah. The way that I have, heard someone on a video, read it somewhere, explain it, and it's kind of stuck with me. And it's that you're not supposed to follow Christ. You're supposed to be like Christ, right?
Right.
So you're not supposed to just fall at the knees of Christ and just be like, oh, and pray and hope that something falls in your lap.
That would be taking the Lord's name in vain.
Right. You are supposed to go out and whatever you're able to do and to help your neighbor and when you say neighbor, that means other human being. It doesn't mean your physical neighbor, and it could be, but that could also be someone on the other side of the world. Right? You need to have that same love and compassion that you would for Jesus Christ or someone in your church. You need to have that for every single human being on this planet. Good, bad, or ugly. Yes, there are some very terrible people that have done some terrible things. That doesn't make it right for you to do terrible things back to them.
There's something that happens when you love people and you refuse to back down, because then they have to recognize, you're human, Yeah. And I think that my hope, I think for McDowell County in particular, just because I've spent the most time with those folks, is that like a lot of them have zero intention of leaving. They're like, I'm going to fight until I die for this place. And
this place? This place is one of the most beautiful places in the world, in my opinion.
Gorgeous. It's
Come
gorgeous.
on.
It is a gorgeous place. And I think that it's worth fighting for. And I think there was a special thing that happened after the flood, in that as much as McDowell County has always been a very friendly, neighborly place, I think about like places like Latin Appalachia and other areas where they just said, okay, day after, time to get to work, and meet the need. And I think that mutual aid, that community building, is only going to grow deeper as all of these cuts hit, right? Yeah. Because I don't think people...
There's no other way to go.
There isn't.
They're only... Yeah, I think we're folks are wired in a way to help each other in a special way in the coal field.
Especially here. Yeah. You're absolutely right. And I will say this. I have been working in McDowell County for about 15 years, 12, 13 years. And it was tough. They're tough down there. Like, they don't just love you out of the gate, right? Like, you gotta show up and you've got to be present. And I do house calls in McDowell County for folks who aren't able to get to other places and perform attorney services down there. Primarily because one person called me and said, I've called every attorney on the list that the courthouse gave me, and no attorneys will come down. And they said you would. And coming from a culture of mutual aid, coming from an activism and an organizer culture, I can't take that hat off to just be a lawyer. I'm not wired that way, right? Those hats come on together sometimes. And that's how I find myself in my profession performing mutual aid in my community, particularly in those counties. And as a result, the genuine appreciation that I feel in return is unlike any other place I work.
Yeah.
It is
absolutely
deeply, deeply appreciated when you show up, and you show up with kindness, and you show up with genuine generosity and genuine concern. And that, for somebody like, for somebody like me, that really feeds me. And that makes me want to continue that work there.
Well, they would show up for you now.
I don't doubt that one bit. I don't doubt it.
Once you prove that you will show up for them, they'll be like, all right, well,
so that's why this is so great. This conversation is so great, because I feel like for the first time in a long time, we are in real time having these conversations that are people across the world can listen to. I'm so inspired right now by this lady, and I'm so glad you brought her on.
I love Caitlyn. I've been trying to get Caitlyn on forever, and we're going to get Brad. We had Brad and scheduling and things happen.
It's tough. I mean, you know what it's like down here, and things come up, but I had no idea. We'll go to Brad. I didn't realize Brad was serving so many churches in McDowell County, and I think to make it, we need to make things as easy as possible for him.
I was going to go and meet him.
Yeah, for sure.
But weather was, I think,
and
weather's been an issue too, and he has been... That dude is busy because he is doing 5 churches.
Well, here's the thing too. I mean, he's got 5 churches. He's also displaced. He had to evacuate his home during the floods.
He still isn't in his home yet?
No, he's not going to be back in his home till close to winter. I mean,
I know he'd been working on it, but I wasn't really sure.
Yeah, so he's got a whole thing going on.
I know.
Yeah,
and I think maybe that can be our focus, is like, how can we be present, highlight the things that are important, but also do some work while we're down there. You know, I talked about that in our toxic tour. We were going to go actually on when we had the folks from a couple different states here. Welch was one of the places I had planned to take them, because to be able to get pickled cactus at the Latin Appalachian in Welch is amazing. But then the floods happened. And I said that I called the owner and said, I have a group of 35 people. I'd love to give you the business. And he said, I can't take it right now. And I said, I'm glad I called. And I want you to know that, like, if there's another way I can support you right now, let me know. But I had to tell the group, like, we rerouted our trip, which was magic in and of itself. It worked out perfectly. But recognizing that the strains that exist in these communities every day are catastrophic.
Yeah.
When you throw a catastrophic event onto the bonfire of catastrophe, it's almost inescapable. And without people like Brad Davis as the glue, without the people who are like, I'm not leaving, I'm going to fight here. But the ways that we encourage this mutual aid is by it's going to come down to our hierarchical needs. And you mentioned them earlier, right? And we talk about how the fact that how can you advocate for something when you're just trying to get your basic needs met, right?
Right.
And food continues to be a current that runs through these conversations, and you creating your food forests here, and Gail talking about going to communities in Europe and Africa where just bread that's super nutritious, that's easy to grow and easy to generate, super nutritious foods that are easy to grow and generate in places like this that are easily, shared and canned and kept. Those are really what we need to get back to, because as this crisis hits, even the people like me who right now have a little spare change to throw toward charity, when the recession comes in about 3 or 4 months, that's not going to be the case.
Right.
So our charity efforts are going to be significantly diminished. So how do we get the infrastructure set up for basic needs like food and things like that? I mean, water, it causes me anxiety to say water, because
I know. I mean, we all know about the water,
right? Like, how do we get the water there too? But these are the building blocks, I think, for the mutual aid safety net.
Well, and I think the thing I love about, like, being able to connect with, like, Wyoming County folks, Mingo folks, is that, like, you were talking about presence, and I think, like, it's so important that, like, showing up as a region, right now, because I think about, just as you were saying, going down and showing that you're intentionally being present with people matters. I think that also models for people that, like, I don't know about y'all, but, like, I grew up in one of those, like, communities where, like, my entire hill was my family. Like, we had, like, it was just house, grandma's across the street, all my cousins are
4
around,
cousins all around. Absolutely. Yeah.
We were like that in the beginning.
My entire hill. Yeah. My entire hill was just my family.
We had a mountain.
But, and a lot of people were like that. I mean, it's an Appalachian thing, but it's like getting people to think outside of their family is difficult. And I think the Coalfields folks are better about it. I think they really are neighborly beyond their family. But, getting folks to think of, okay, so you went beyond your family, and then you went to your holler, and then you went to your community, and then you went to your county. We're talking about what we're heading into with all of these cuts, needs a regional effort, because the scarcity of resources at this point is only going to be made up, I think, by sharing regionally.
Right, because the
And-
Midwest
and
isn't
so-
going to share the same scarcity that we are, right? Like it is absolutely regional.
So having, like being present with folks, across the coalfields regionally, I think it's important. And it also models for people that like we can trust our coalfield siblings, like, Mingo, Wyoming, McDowell, Mercer, Boone, we all stand together. Right.
Yep. That's
We
right.
we don't have a rivalry in any true sense, right?
Except to the bootlickers.
Well, the bootlickers can pound sand as always.
They don't know solidarity.
No,
They're scabs.
Not at
It's so
all.
funny.
They're
When you got a
scabs.
comment one time about you called somebody a bootlicker online. You're like, we are not going to listen to bootlickers. And she's like, I wonder what's taking him so long to respond. I said, he's looking up bootlicker. He's got to figure out how you just insulted him. He's forgotten. But I'm happy that we are at the age we are and the place we are where we can share this story and we have this technology, this new technology that can connect us. So hearing you talk about a regional and coordinated effort, like I think the intention for this podcast from the beginning has been like that voice of like, wouldn't it be great to have somebody from Mingo, McDowell, Wyoming, and do a podcast and say common issues, not so common issues, resources, where you can find them, how you can find them. Resource cataloging and banking and inventorying local resources is another thing I think communities need to start focusing on. And there is a nerdy person somewhere in every community who's like, give me an Excel spreadsheet. Give me a reason to use an Excel spreadsheet. I want to put some data in. I'm looking at you, Lindsay Rotzer.
I don't know why you're attacking me on our podcast.
Because I am not that person. I'm like technologically inept, right? But people who manage that technology and spreadsheets are what it takes is like, okay, catalog.
Neurodivergence. We need the neurodivergent people in the house.
I completely agree.
My whole household is full of neurodivergence. Like,
Yeah, Brad and I always joke because I'm like the spreadsheet person of the two of us, and so he's so good at like the on the ground like public speaking things, and then I'm like,
that's me, right?
I'm like typing all the info, right? Like,
and I think it's great to
really
see
good
those teams,
partnership that way.
those partnerships and teams, and then connecting those teams. We're building synergy, and I know it's really hard to see because it's.
there's a locust on you.
Outstanding.
Okay, there's
a locust. We got our locust on
It's
camera.
okay.
At least they're not deafening at the moment.
No. They're chilling out now.
I can hear y'all pretty good.
Yeah, the sound is really great here. This location is fabulous. I feel like a little bit of like water energy, and
Well,
then
you know where we
green
are
trees.
actually. This is like a little hole here.
We're protected, kind
Well,
of down
it's because in the flood of 2021, this is where the water was, and it washed
carved
all
the
this
hole.
out. And so
Yeah.
this is my little chill spot now.
I think it's great. I really want to work in a concerted effort around regional coordination and communication and around providing a place. I have a little list of things I'm going to talk about at the end of the podcast today about like a fundraiser in Summers County for a playground and like things like that that I think people need to hear about. But as an old school organizer, hearing somebody talk about counties and regional efforts, and I love how you describe it. Like, you've got your family, right? And then you reach out to your community, and then you go a little bigger to your town, and then you're like, well, hell, that's the county commission's decision, so I'm going to bounce out to the county commission. And when you organize and you work in communities, you understand that is the progress of the thinking. And at every phase, about 20% of your people peel off. And you got 20% less at the next phase. And then going to the state capitol, you've only got a handful of people, right? Because they're what's left. And at every phase, I've always said that, like I feel like I'm this connector in between this piece and this piece, because I can talk to both pieces, and I am of this place, but my education has let me get into those places, right? And let me in and let me cause some havoc and talk to some people here, because we are bigger and smarter and a lot more organized than anybody gives us credit for. As I meet people like you and Brad and all the folks that have been pounding away at this down here, I'm impressed and encouraged to continue, and so I'm so inspired. I'm just rambling because I'm so inspired right now. And it takes a lot to get me inspired.
But then also, we're doing the regional thing, but we've also done other regions. So bringing other regions together.
Yes.
We brought the Baltimore and some, Pittsburgh people, and we tried with the East Palestine.
The railroad workers are another tie. Fritz, oh my gosh, our railroad friend Fritz, meeting Barbara Ward at the Black Lung Benefit, the Hazel Dickens 100-year birthday Black Lung Benefit. Those people are powerful and inspiring, and how to kind of gain on that synergy while at the same time seeing this financial crisis coming down. It's like we're in this time zone. So, first of all, I hope you join us again, and I hope you join us maybe when you come down and visit with Brad. We can go into McDowell County and do some work down there.
And we'll talk a little more about the water, because I think the real reason was because, because I want to say this, that Wyoming County, right here, where we are, has the most health violations in water. Is that, or the most water violations
in the country?
In the nation. And then Caitlyn sent me this thing over this past week and was like, hey, take a look. Wyoming County is at the very bottom of the priority list. And I was damn it. Come and be on my podcast.
Y'all were talking about like the spreadsheet people. I literally
I know, and this is why I love her, because she'll just send me information like that she's found on a spreadsheet.
People make my life easier. I am a big fan.
I'm a spreadsheet bitch, and I
outstanding.
I ended up. I dug way too deep into this thing, and so for the record, can I just take off?
You can
on
do.
This?
Please take off.
Go for it.
So here's the scoop. So Wednesday morning, I think it's 9 or 9:30 at the DEP office in Charleston. There's the priority meeting for the 2026 projects. And so I ended up, I said, okay, well, I guess I should probably look into what's going on before I get there, right? And, I'll say there are multiple Coalfield projects that appear to be in the top 10 now. You've got Logan County PSD, Crum, Gary, and some others, I think. But, the problem I figured out was that even though you can get state revolving funds and you can be on the priority list, you still have to have your town's end of things, or your your county level PSD, whatever level you're working on, has to make up for the rest of that money. They're not going to, it's not like a total coverage deal that they give to you. And so the town of Gary, for example, now they've had problems for quite a while. I know at one point, I think it was 2020, Jim Justice actually had to come down and give people water in Gary because he'd been found liable for 3,000 violations.
One of his mines.
Yeah, one of his mines in
right.
Gary. And so anyway, there's this priority point system that you get based off of medium household income and unemployment rate, poverty rate, health violations, all of that. And, Gary got 80 priority points. And it's number 3 on a list of 187. But the problem is that the loan amount is only $500,000 and the project cost is $3.8 million. Well, the town of Gary
and it's a loan.
Does not have the money.
Did you say that was a loan, meaning they have to pay that back?
Yeah, it was a state revolving fund loan of $500,000. Now you can, depending on those levels of unemployment and poverty rate and median household income and all those
your
things.
tax base, right? So whatever the payback would be is what you're basically measure in there.
Some of it, some of them get like you don't like a very very low interest rate, or like you can get like coverage, like 100% coverage or something, but it still doesn't cover the entire project cost. It's just that loan amount. And so I was looking at here's y'all's so with Pineville, the Brenton Baileysville projects only got 35 priority points, and I have yet to figure out that like why.
What I'm really confused about is that I saw there's a newspaper article from June or July of 2024 saying that was fully funded.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm confused at how they can say something's fully funded and now we have to be put on a priority list or something.
And I did see on that the project list for 2026. It did say that there was funding to move forward with it, but the problem is I can't figure out what, like, again, why are they ranked? Brenton Baileysville is ranked 113 out of 187. It only got 35 out of 100 priority points, and the loan amount is 1.9 million, and the total cost of the project is 9.4 million.
What?
There's not a chance in hell that Pineville can cover that. No, and that's just a loan too, so they would have to pay that back, which means they'd probably be up in the water bill.
The headlines are saying that these monies are coming in, and
I have the headline that says fully funded.
And this is actually the situation is there's no way these towns and municipalities are actually going to be able to do these projects.
No.
And that's the only sense that I can make out of why, the Anahuac Public Service District project's been the way it is. Because in McDowell County, that's, Brad and I have been primarily focused on the Anahuac community, and it got ranked like 24th this year. But it said the project amount for it was, they would give $2 million to the project. That's 11.3 million total.
What's number one?
Number one was Century Volga, which is actually up my way. That would probably be Barber County. It's Barber County. And so the top 10, and I don't have them all in order, but top 10 would be Century Volga, PSD. That's number one. Crum is number 6. Gary is number 3. Hardy County has 2 projects that are ranked 2nd and 4th. Kaiser is 7th. Logan County PSD is 8th. Lubeck, I don't know where Lubeck is, if I'm being honest, is number 5. Monumental, which I believe would be Marion County, is 9, and 10 is St. Mary's. So a lot of northern towns, a couple coastal towns. But again, even if you get $2 million, if the project's 11 point whatever, you're never going to get completed. So I think that's what keeps happening with some of these projects, is that they do get prioritized, and they do get ranked high, but they can never move forward with the projects because they'll never be able to afford it.
And then the politicians get the headlines of monies are given and grants are given and loans are approved, but nothing actually happens. And that goes back to the accountability piece we talk about, where it's like, who holds them accountable with this information? It's very clear that it's set up so that these places can't accomplish what they need to accomplish, even with these funds, right?
Lubeck's outside of Parkersburg.
Oh, so it's chemical contamination.
Yeah.
And I'll say, like, I mean, if you look at the priority point system for how they prioritize these projects, theoretically, it should be rigged to, not rigged, but you should be able to bank on Coalfield projects being number one, because if it's based on unemployment, median household income, poverty rate, and all that, like, you should be like,
and health violations.
Like, right, like you should be able to bank on getting those priority points, but the state just does not have the money to completely cover those projects. And so they just keep going year after year after year.
Yeah, because the Wyoming County PSD has had non-reporting violations for 30 years. You can't even pull data from the Wyoming County PSD. I remember when we served the citizen subpoenas across the state, and that was one of the things as we were looking at water violations then, and this was in 2013. We were like, well, where's the data? Well, I went on to the website, and all it said is, no data available, no data available, no data available.
They just don't test.
They just don't test, and then they don't get, there's no real repercussion for not reporting.
No, they send 6 months later, they put a little note on everybody's door that says, oh, we forgot to test. What are you going to do? What are we going to do about it? What can we do about it? We can get a podcast and bitch about it. And that's what we're doing. Maybe somebody will listen.
But that's the thing. So, being located, in the northern part of the state, being from the northern part of the state, I try to go around as much as I can to different churches, different communities, and have conversations about what's happening, because I think people just have no frame of reference for what they're working with.
Right.
And, and it's like, do I agree? Weirton and Fairview and other areas that have yellow, brown, red water running, are in similar situations. Absolutely. But the thing is, money always goes north of 64. And when is it the turn for the Coalfields? And I had this whole ass debate with this guy. He was an engineer in the Charleston area, and I won't name names, but he, every time we tell people about what's happening here, they go, well, how many miles from the system are they, and what's the population of that area? And they say, well, if you have $10 million and you can send it to a community of 200 or a community of 5,000, where's the money going to go to? And all I can say is those 200 home communities still matter. And it's been 30 fucking years. When's time? And time's due.
And the other thing I think that's playing into this is the reason for the contamination is the coal industry. And from how many different sources? From mountaintop removal, covering streams with valley fills, from blasting, from deep mining. All of it is from the coal industry. And that's why they don't want to say the 9 counties that were part of the Elk River chemical spill that were put on public water because their local water sources had already been destroyed 25 years ago. So they built out the Charleston water to them, and then they contaminated that. It's clear.
There's that. I mean, the city of Gary actually sources their water from an abandoned mine. That's where their city water is.
So does Wyoming County.
How weird is that?
It is. Yeah.
It's the best water in the country. They'll tell you it's the best water in the country.
So you have that.
Because somebody told them.
There's something to be said too, though, for oil and gas. And I thought up and down. I was like, with Anawalt, if you look at specifically the community of Lackey, if you look at Lackey and McDowell County, it is completely surrounded by MTR sites. The mine map around it is utterly surrounded, surrounding that area. And I was like, up and down. I was like, well, there you go. They blasted and messed up an aquifer. That's why their well water's bad. And I'm sure that had part of it. But I realized recently, talking with folks, they said, well, it went bad first in the 80s, and then it went bad in 2019. Well, 2019 is when the MTR kicked up. That's when they all started moving in. But if you look at the particular problem in Lackey, it's that when the water sits for a certain amount of time, that's when it starts changing colors. And there's got to be something with oil and gas too in that area. And with Wyoming County, the whole methane stuff with wells exploding. I mean, shit. So that's a whole other thing. But it's extractive industry as a whole. It's across the board.
And I don't understand why you can't take those tax dollars that you should get from that industry and help the infrastructure that they are destroying.
Yep.
That's the least they could do.
Well, we've talked about severance taxes in other states. There are severance taxes in other states that pay for education and different things, and we don't
get
that here.
That.
No,
we don't get it. They have always come in and taken whatever they wanted and destroyed it and left us for dead. And that's how it is. And that's why people are like, well, either you just need to leave so you can survive. No. I love this fucking place.
Hey, I could find somewhere else I could love too. You going to finance my move?
Exactly.
You're going to give me my down payment for my
house.
You find me 60 acres and a nice house somewhere, I'm happy to move. You pay for it, I'm done. But it's so easy to sit there and say, you should do this.
Yeah, you should move.
Do that.
You should move your sick parents out of there from their home that they've been for 50 years.
Well, and I mean, Elise, you said you're a real estate agent, right?
I'm a lawyer. I'm an attorney, a real estate attorney. I do have a broker's license too, but I'm primarily an attorney.
Okay, gotcha. But I mean, how many people want to buy homes that don't have clean water?
Well, I had a comment on one of my posts that was like, I'm about to buy a house there. Should I? And I couldn't say anything. Like, look, I know you commented and asked, but I can't give you that.
Do your due diligence.
I don't know where your property is. I don't know any of that.
So that raises a great question for the fiduciary commitment of agents who have a fiduciary obligation to share information, but there are limits on that. They don't have to share negative information about environmental impacts. That's not something they're required to do.
What if their water that's coming into the home that they're buying
Can you prove it? Again, it comes down to like buyer beware, right? It's due diligence. It's you're moving to the Coalfields. There are podcasts about poison water, and you're going to move here.
You should probably look into where you're going.
Right.
And I get fired up enough sometimes that I'm like, you know what? I'm quitting. I'm buying a house in Davie, and I don't know why. Like
Davie's right over there. I got lost in Davie one time.
How could you get lost in Davie?
No. I was trying to get to Pineville, and I was when I very first started working down here again because I took
you ended up in Hanover.
No, I got right there at the intersection in Welch during a shift change, and there was all kinds of traffic, and I was trying not to hit anybody, and I just went straight instead of turning right to go to Pineville.
You hit Davie instead,
and then my GPS stopped working, my internet stopped working, and I found myself in Davie, and there was one person out there sweeping the street in Davie in the middle of the day, and I was like, I'm going to ask him. And he pointed to the mountain, and I knew there was a way to go over an old abandoned strip mine, like a coal mine road, to get over to Pineville. And I just shook my head. I said, I'm not going up there. He said, then I'd go back to Welch. I said, I think I'm going to go back to Welch.
Go back to Welch.
But I know where Davie is, and I will come visit you.
Yes. In all seriousness, I mean, I really did. I was looking at like houses, and I was like, there was some actually really lovely houses in Davie. But then what happened was I would look, and it would say no sewage, or it would say
straight pipe into the creek,
public water.
Yeah.
Or it would I would pull it up on Google, and I'd be like, oh, that is literally beneath an MTR site. And unless you pay attention to that,
oh, absolutely.
You're not, and again, you can't move because who's going to buy your home?
Right.
Nobody's going to buy your home.
Right.
Look.
Beautiful. We have birds circling up above us here.
Oh my God, that's a huge bird.
So it's about 4:00, so I'm going to wrap us up here. But I want to say,
go. I talk to Caitlyn
what can
forever.
we do for you? Like, we have this podcast, and we get people on here, and we talk about it, and we try to push it out, and we try to create really shorts that are impactful. But is there more that we can be doing? Like, what can we be doing to help you and support folks like you and Brad?
I mean, the water crisis has kind of like it's just kind of like consumed the work at the moment, just because of like the capacity that the two of us have.
Sure.
But like, one of the things that like when we created from below. Like, so it started out as an immersion group. We were bringing people down and trying to like immerse them in the culture and the history. And we figured out quickly, like, okay, this is becoming more than an immersion experience. Like, regardless of that switch in what we were doing, the main aim of what we've been trying to do is to say, like, we need folks north of 64 to pay attention and partner with and support and stand in solidarity with folks in the Coalfield. And so one of the, I mean, we were talking about this last night, actually, is like, the reason we're called From Below, Rising Together for Coalfield Justice is, like, you know, McDowell County is just quite literally and physically living from below. It is the southernmost county, right? And it's like, we are only going to rise if we rise together.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Elaine Murphy talks about, she's a Lincoln County native, and one of her songs is One Day More. She says, we don't need your pity, we just need your helping hand.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
I think it's getting this word out to the folks in northern West Virginia, to make, like honestly, just to educate them, because, like, I mean, they just have no conception of it, because that the issues just aren't as prevalent. Again, it's not in your face. It's out of sight and out of mind. And I think the more that we can, like, whatever you're talking about, getting that out north of 64 is important, because people do care. Like, I've learned, I mean, like, the water buffalo that we're looking at getting for Wyoming County actually is ordered on its way.
Oh my God.
Congratulations. That's so exciting.
She's the one to tell me. She'll just, like, throw me out some, and I'm like, I'm telling people, I don't know what's happening. I think there's a water buffalo.
Yes, that's ordered. Wonderful.
It is ordered. Wow. It is ordered. And so, like, you know, that came all the way from Wheeling. And people said,
that's a great point. Yeah.
You know, they heard it and they said, oh my God, how can we help? And I said, well, this is how you can help.
And I have to credit you to that, Caitlyn, though. I really do. Because you come down here and you say, oh, I'm not from here, and you're not, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But I got to tell you, you've done more for this area than people that have lived here their entire lives.
And part of it is the resources and know-how.
Yeah.
But part of it is
and
just
gumption.
The gumption and the desire to do it, right?
And I appreciate that so much.
But that's exactly what I needed, is a goal. Like, we can now we can push it out to Morgantown folks and Berkeley County folks and Jefferson County folks and say, hey, you got pipeline issues and stuff too. And I know that because I don't hear from my very conservative people in those parts of the counties until shit starts happening in their backyard, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, we got a pipeline coming through, can we get that list of things we need to talk to them about, you know, that we which, by the way, we have. It's 2.5 pages long. If you need like the exhaustive list of everything you need to deal with on a right away, I'm happy to help with that. And but I love this. I like a tangible goal, and I know that we know people north of 64, and north of 64 is a great catchphrase, because this rich man in Richmond idea, right? Like this this idea of these people in another place that triggers folks to say, what about the people north of 64?
We're all from West Virginia, though.
Absolutely. That's why they should be involved.
You have the same license plate I do. People look at you the same way.
I don't have
when
a
you
Friends
go
of Coal
into
license plate.
No, but your license plate is West Virginia.
Mine says loving it wild and wonderful, as a matter of fact. So yes, West Virginia, loving it wild and wonderful is my license plate.
When you go out of state and people see that West Virginia, there's an automatic.
Oh my gosh. And I met people from West Virginia everywhere too. I met Carol and Judy from Buchanan, who I met at Howard Park in Tarpon Springs,
if you
Florida.
have a West Virginia sticker anywhere in the United States, you'll find somebody be like, where from West Virginia are you from? I am from here, or my parents are from there. It's really cool. It's really cool. There's a solidarity, and so we need to keep that with the south of 64 and the north of 64 when we come together.
And I think, like, you know, the best that I can do at this point, not living there, is just like amplify the voices, and you all are the voices, right? But I think what you're doing is just like, you're getting the awareness out there, and I think just getting it north of 64, because people care.
Hashtag north of
64. Hashtag north of 64. I see it. I want a t-shirt. Hey, north of
they
64.
do care. They just don't know.
You're
and
right. And the mine history and the Blair Mountain and the mine wars and our union strong labor history.
Right.
People like you are like, what?
We have
That
to remember.
happened?
We have to remember who we are and where we are from.
Right.
Caitlyn,
What?
go ahead with some final thoughts.
I was just gonna say real quick. It's like one in 3 West Virginians live within 1 mile of an abandoned mine land. One in 3, and so like if you look at maps of like Marion County, the entire county is on a mine shaft, just like a lot of the southern coal fields.
There's an entire, you can find a map. There's a video somewhere way back because my friend Corey showed me where to find them. You can find all the gas wells and the mines.
Yep.
You know where they're at. They're everywhere.
Yeah, and so I say that to say it's like, I mean, is the situation in the northern coal fields the same as the southern coal fields? Absolutely not. It's not.
Right.
But I think when we can share that commonality and say that, like, there is a lot that we share. Let's talk about that.
They know the stories of their grannies and their grandpas who were there.
It's there. And unfortunately it's coming back. Again, Arch Lear and others are ramping up,
anything they can get, they're going to come back and get. Yeah.
And so I think, any way that we can just keep sharing the story and educating folks about it, people care. They just don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
And that story is coming back to them because I think, in some deep way, like the ancestors want to be heard.
Yes. Yes.
And they want to be heard and they will be heard. It's coming back. I think we just it's gotta catch the ears of a people a little further north.
Well, this is what we're doing.
Here's to catching some ears.
Mountaineers
and other ears.
Caitlyn, so thank you for coming on, and I hope you'll be a regular. I'm just gonna.
I can't wait to meet you in person down here. And
when you come back,
yes.
When you come to the Coalfields, let us know. We'll do an in-person one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And y'all look out. Y'all better watch out because we just something just
so
happened.
inspired. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, a little bit of your work. And I know it's hard in these podcasts because there's so much. We could talk for literally hours and hours and hours about
so many
layers of things. So I'm glad you've agreed to come back and talk to us. And you're welcome to stay with us. We're going to do some housekeeping pieces and check in on some other things. So if you want to hang out with us for a few minutes, you're welcome. Awesome.
Yay.
I wanted to say I needed to clarify in our last podcast, or not our last podcast. Gosh, you've been working away since I took a little break, but
some of us ain't been on vacation.
The podcast that I did where we talked about Zach Shrewsbury's race, I misspoke. Zach was in a primary race.
Yeah.
For Mansion seat, right?
For Mansion seat, and he didn't win the primary.
Correct. So I as I was talking about it, I was bragging about getting it right and getting it wrong at the same time. So I wanted to make that clarification. Cute. Yeah, because the lawyer in me just can't stand that I've said something wrong online trying to be right. The other thing I wanted to mention is in Summers County, which I am a Raleigh County resident, but I live in the little part of Raleigh County that pokes down into Summers County, and I'm like 2.5 miles away from the elementary school in Summers County and 23 miles away from the one in Raleigh County, right? So even though I'm a resident of Raleigh County and I pay Raleigh County property taxes and all that for Raleigh County students, my son goes to Summers County schools, and he goes to Hinton Area Elementary, which is the elementary school I went to as a child. And they are still using pretty much the same equipment. I think they've changed it maybe once. There's still gravel causing lots of injuries on the playground, and there's still it's not the best playground for these students. And there was a levy on the ballot in the 2024 election that it was actually on the primary ballot and failed, and then they brought it back. They revamped it and brought it back on the general election ballot, and it also failed. But part of those funds were for new playground equipment for our schools in Summers County. So since the levy failed, my husband is actually the one who's really been pushing on this. We created a GoFundMe that we launched this morning. We got approval from the infrastructure folks at the Summers County schools to do a GoFundMe for $55,000 to build an outside 80 by 40 pavilion. So when weather's bad, they can still get outside, and also to get some rubber recycled rubber for the playground surface. So we launched that this morning. I'm going to be pushing it out like crazy. I jumped back on Facebook specifically for this purpose.
I saw her on Facebook this morning.
People on Facebook were like, whoa, what's she doing back after years off?
No, we noticed that it was for your child's elementary school, and
Correct.
we're like, oh,
okay.
That's why she's on Facebook now.
So I want to put that out there. And, I have that tension inside of me because as we talked at the beginning of this podcast about the very profound issues facing the folks in these counties and the fact that charity is how we're going to be relying on getting a lot of these folks' funds, it feels odd then asking for money for projects like this, right? But I think it goes to your point that those little projects are still equally important, right? Because there are people there that it matters to. And I'm grateful that you followed up by saying that, because I had tension within myself around that. Like, it feels silly to ask for playground equipment when people don't have basic needs met, right?
Here's the thing.
But that's project's important. Those kids need a safe place to play, and Caitlyn helped me see that it really is. 200 people matter just as much as 5,000 people.
Well,
and that's, yeah.
Look, my son has special needs. I fought the entire Wyoming County Board of Education for years to get him a room in the junior high that he was supposed to go to. They wanted to trek him off to Baileysville because they're like, we don't have a room for him. I was like, no, that's not happening. And I understand, we're going to do all this for one kid. Yes. Because he is one kid that goes there, that's supposed to go there, deserves to go where he's supposed to go. We could throw a rock to that school. I'm not trekking him 30 minutes away.
Good for you.
No.
And good for you for advocating for that,
too. Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's being used now, but it was used for a little bit, and then COVID happened.
Well, even if it transitions into a breastfeeding room for somebody, right?
It has a washer and dryer. It's got a kitchen. It's a full room
There are ways
to
use that space, if you do it right. And so I think this playground equipment, my mom and dad gave money this morning to it. Mom called me. She said, well, I thought, Edward's only going to be there for a couple more years. But no, I have another grandson who's going in. He's just registered for kindergarten. So we got, two of their grandkids in there, and they gave a very generous donation. So, but it goes back to the fact that we have to rely on charity in these places to get these things done, because
and who knows how long that's going to be there. Their grandkids are probably going to be.
I'm going to hit up my people north of 64. You're going to be getting my my fundraiser, my GoFundMe north of 64. So the last thing I want to mention is the event in Charleston, because you said
today is No King's Day, right? There was some protest and
days of action across the country.
I know that this is our own form of protest, right? And this is what we do, and it's just easier for me to be in my home, and I can't go out on the streets and do that. Like, I'm not young.
Right. You have a special needs son.
I do have a special
obligations,
needs son.
Right.
But
so
I saw
Lindsay,
the ACLU and I saw Rusty Williams, and they're like, we got our own signs and you can come get our signs. I'm like, Rusty, I'm coming. And I'm like, Elise, should we go to Charleston? She's like, no, I'm not going to Charleston.
I just drove 11, 12 hours yesterday. I was like, I'm not driving to Charleston today.
I literally, so like up here in Davis, I was thinking, this is my protest for the day. But I was like, what if I just went and made a sign? I said, I'd be the only one in Davis. I'm just out there at the town hall with me and a sign.
No, we need to take a picture of you, and then you'll be like the lone protester.
What did your sign say? I have to know. What did your sign say?
Protested rural life, right?
Yes.
This is how rural protests are.
Yes.
The one lone person.
I'm just going to
getting the honks from the horns as they drive by, right? What did your sign say? I have to know.
Oh, I didn't get to make it yet, but I literally came up from Buchanan this morning as the Buchanan protest was getting ready to start, and I said, how could I come back? And I said, it would be me at the post office,
right? Just
waiting for 2 cars to pass.
That's so funny.
Well, I should do that in Pineville at the intersection.
So, that's funny, actually.
The easy stop.
Right.
I'll get run over at the easy stop.
Yeah. Actually, that probably wouldn't go over great at the easy stop.
Probably not. But I think that this is our form of protest, and
it is.
And calling it out and saying that anybody who wants to share footage of their events or talk about pros, cons, whatever. I tried to, I saw a creator on TikTok who was like, hey, we're trying to get some stuff kicked off here in our city and nobody's helping us. And I was like, I'm going to try. Tag some people. It was near Huntington. It was up around near Huntington, right?
Yeah.
And she was grateful for that. And I feel like she's a local creator who's, doing good work. And it feels like that's also kind of a mutual aid thing. Now, you've heard me talk about AstroTurf versus grassroots. Like, you can't sit there at your computer and think you're doing good by punching buttons all day. You got to actually do some stuff, right?
You got to do something.
But sometimes that is a way to help.
Yeah.
Sometimes in that moment, getting that person a couple hundred extra views might drive 2 or 3 people there.
Not saying that being on your computer is not going to help, and that connection that we can get. That's how I met Caitlyn.
Sure. Yes.
But it's got to be in addition to
correct
getting your ass up and doing something,
right.
Showing up.
Like
right.
we said earlier, presence.
A presence. You have to show some presence. You have to be there, and you can't just be words on social media, because words don't mean much anymore.
That's true. Right. And you don't know whose words you're reading anymore. That relationship and that face-to-face interaction is going to become more important as we go on. But that's all I have to say.
I know. I
that's
love
the end
you.
of my list. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. And I'm looking forward to our future conversations. And congratulations on your ordination. And I have a tough spot in my heart for people of the clergy, but certain ones I adore. And those are the ones who come to it from a place of, I don't know why I'm here, but I woke up and said, let's go to church today. And then I decided to do this. Like, that feels very divine and very called to me. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you guys, you and Brad are the preachers that I follow. And I've talked about my whole religious trauma and all of that I have. Mm-hmm. But the things that you speak, I'm like, yes, that's how you're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Do I believe in a hell or anything? I mean, that's honestly, I
deeply
feel like
personal.
Everything is personal. But
I don't. But
right? And that's my whole thing. Is like, I can't get behind all of that.
I think you can create your own hell.
Right.
I think that
and
people
I have created
my
own hell before, and I've dug myself out of that hell.
Right.
A couple
because
times.
The kingdom of heaven is within you.
Right. Exactly. And I am going to be like Christ. And that's so it. I'm going to be like Christ. I am going to go out and do what I can to help my neighbors in any way that I am able to do it. And I can't put myself out for it, but I can use whatever skills I have. And this is the skills that I have, and this is what I'm doing.
And your spreadsheet skills are fierce, Caitlyn. Fierce.
Yeah.
Fierce.
I too have some spreadsheet skills.
Compliment I could get.
I'm honestly. So glad to give it.
For the love of God, please tell Brad Davis that. He will roll his eyes for the next eternity.
Hey, spreadsheet skills are very important in life. You have no idea.
And I'll clarify. I will say I'm 2 years to ordination, but I am on the path. I've started the path toward it. So,
fantastic.
So I am serving in a church. I'm what's known as a provisional elder. So I got 2 more years.
Whatever.
And you got people that'll vouch for you. I know that the state, they just need some people to vouch for you.
In my eyes, that's just like red tape that you have to go through. I don't think God likes red tape.
I don't know if my son just made his appearance. My son just walked behind us in the creek bed looking for rocks. So I don't know.
No, he lost my dog's ball in the creek.
Oh. Well, we'll go solve that problem.
Okay, we got to go.
All right, Caitlyn.
Well, I hope I can join y'all on the creek next time.
Yes. Tom told me not to turn anything off, so I got to keep everything on and get him. But it was good talking to you, and we'll be in touch.
Thank so much, Caitlyn.
Thank you.
Y'all take care.
It's so good to see y'all.
Appalachian Living is sponsored in part by Wade Law Firm, PLLC. Sage Stitch Finance Corporation, representing wisdom and mending what we already have, providing gap funds for resilient renovations.
Appalachian Living is also brought to you by Hope Money Coaching, rescuing you from financial chaos and leading you to a path of financial wellness. Minimalist Gym, helping men and women navigate their health and fitness without restrictive fad diets.